I was listening to the song Old Blue Eyes on the radio as I drove to my retirement party. 42 years I worked at the same place, Ford Motor Company. Mary and I have been looking forward to my retirement all my life. We'll finally be able to visit all those places we've been thinking about all these years. The only problem was my sweet Mary died of cancer 2 years ago. Now I was living alone in a big house. I figured I would find a nice place to live after I retired. Too many memories and too big a house to take care of. Hell, I was already 62 years old. For the last 2 years, I've been working and taking care of the house while working at the same time. Doing anything to keep busy. Now it was time to move on. Listening to Frank on the radio, I drove and thought about my life. I was drafted into the Army and served 2 years. My father got me a job at Ford's right out of high school. After I was drafted, they kept my job for me. They even allowed me to continue continuous service while I served my country. So now I have 42 years of service. Not many people spend their entire lives with one employer. I met Mary shortly after returning from the service. I was attending a friend's wedding and Mary was one of the bridesmaids. My friend told me that Mary and her boyfriend had recently broken up and Mary was at the wedding alone. It didn't take me long to introduce myself. We ended up spending the whole night together, and I don't just mean the wedding. Maybe it was the fact that I wasn't in the service, or maybe it was the fact that I was a horny 22-year-old, but I wanted Mary. It was kind of like love at first sight, but I chalked it up to excitement. After the wedding reception, I took her to my place and we had sex. Her body was so soft and warm. She looked and smelled great. I went down on her, and when I finally entered her, I knew I wanted her to be my girlfriend. I don't know how many times we did it that night. The next morning, she apologized and said she wasn't the type of woman to sleep with someone. I guess it was all the drinking at the wedding and the fact that I caught her at the hookup. I asked her if she was sober now, and she said of course she was. Will you let me make love to you now while you're sane? We went back to the bedroom and made love. I knew right away that we would be together forever. We started dating and had sex all the time. If I wasn't working, I was with Mary. She worked as a clerk at a local drugstore. Only 3 months after the wedding we attended, she told me she was pregnant. I did not hesitate to ask her to marry me. We went to the judge's office and had a small reception with family and friends. Over the next 16 years, we had 6 children. She even had 2 miscarriages. Our life was what I thought was normal as a child. We had good times and bad times. We spent most of our time attending children's activities. 4 boys and 2 girls, and I think they participated in every activity possible. It seemed like we had somewhere to go almost every day. Of course, Mary always put the children first. Even when we had vacations, we spent them as a family. I don't think Mary and I ever spent a vacation alone. She said we could go by ourselves when the kids left the nest and I retired. And so I found myself retired and alone. Needless to say, after the birth of our first children, our sex life decreased dramatically. It was hard enough just being alone together, let alone making love. We still had a few special moments like our wedding anniversary, when we did make love. I should have realized that most married couples go through the same thing. It's just part of life. If we met at least once a month, we were lucky. After the birth of our 4th child, we needed a bigger house. My grandparents were of age and offered to sell me their farm for a very cheap price. There were 300 acres of land and a big house with 6 bedrooms, barns, and other outbuildings. I told Grandpa I didn't want to be a farmer. He said I could live in the house and rent the land to local farmers, and that would help pay for the house. I knew he wanted me to have the farm, so Mary and I talked it over and bought it. The kids loved it. Now each of them wanted to have pets. They had all been in 4-H for many years, and we had a whole menagerie of animals throughout the school years. I managed to get through the maintenance program at Ford's and eventually became a pipe fitter. I got my journeyman's license and was now making a lot of money, at least for a factory worker. Maintenance workers were the highest paid hourly workers. By leasing the land to local farmers and making a decent wage, we were able to pay off the farm in 25 years. And that's even though the kids started college and we never did much for ourselves. We always said, "We'll have time when the kids are gone," Mary said. Looking back, I don't regret the life I lived, but I wish I could have done more for Mary. She was happy just being around her children, being a mother and grandmother. We had some bad times too. The kids were sick. Mary and I fought over little things that seem like small things now. We had one big fight, though, after which I went away for a week. Every 5 years, Mary went to a reunion. She liked meeting old friends. I never went to a reunion with my friends, so I had no desire to go to one. Anyway, when it came time for the 15-year reunion, she asked me to go. In one of my weakest moments, I decided to say yes. Mary was thrilled, so I guess I made her happy. I knew most of her girlfriends I'd met over the years, but few of the boys, now men, from her class. I guess my jealousy kicked in a bit when she started dancing with all these former classmates. One of them, in particular, was paying too much attention to her, in my opinion. I did my best not to cause trouble, but I'll talk to Mary about that later. I danced a couple dances with her, but otherwise just sat around drinking beer. I wondered if Mary had ever slept with any of these guys. I knew she wasn't a virgin since we slept together on our first date. I also wondered if one of them could be the guy she broke up with before she met me. Mary had never given me a reason not to trust her, but watching her dance in another man's arms and me having too much to drink was not a good combination for me. She was cuddling them for the night when we left. With this Brad guy, she cuddled too long for my taste. All the way home, I didn't say a word. Mary was having fun, and I wasn't in the mood to start a fight right now. The next day, I had to work, and our kids were going on a field trip to church. I just went upstairs and went to bed. The next morning, I was hungover at work, and nothing seemed to be working. My boss said we had to finish this job before we left for the day. I called Mary and told her I was going to be home late and not to make dinner for me. She reminded me that the kids were gone for the day and she wouldn't be cooking tonight anyway. We got lucky at work and finished earlier than expected. Finally, I thought, something is going right. I'm coming home early. When I pulled into the driveway, there was an unfamiliar car parked there. It was a rental car. I wondered who it belonged to. I opened the front door and there was Mary and this Brad guy hugging. It looked like I broke the kiss when I opened the door. His hands were on Mary's ass. "What the hell is going on?" shouted I. "John, it's not what it seems. Looks like that bastard's got his hands up your ass." Mary pushed his hands away as I approached him. He held up his hands and said, "Nothing happened, John. I was just saying goodbye." I pushed him, and he fell onto the coffee table. I grabbed him and was about to hit him when Mary yelled at me. "John, please stop. We didn't do anything wrong. He was just getting ready." I don't want to lie anymore. I saw you with my own eyes. If you want that bastard, you can have him. Hell, for all I know, you already have one, and he's probably Jeff's father. I punched him once and walked out the front door. I had no idea where I was going. I regretted saying that part about Jeff, but I was furious, and we all tend to say things we can't take back. I always thought Jeff was my biological son. I heard Mary yelling at me, but I didn't listen. I got in my truck and drove off. After driving around for a few minutes, I decided to go back and beat the shit out of the guy. When I pulled up to the house, I saw that his car was gone. I wasn't going to go talk to Mary, so I headed into town and found a cheap motel. There was a bar next to it, so I went in and decided to get drunk. I walked over to the jukebox and pressed the button for "That's Life." It's a song I've always loved to listen to. I listened to the part where Frank sings, "I've been up and down, here and there." And I know one thing. Every time I find myself lying down, flat on the face, I just picked myself up and got back into the race. Then I said to myself, if Mary can have sex, so can I. I met this girl in a bar and bought her a drink. She told me she was married and her husband was on a business trip with his secretary. I know he's having fun with her. It's not the first time. We sat there, got drunk together, and headed to my room. My room was just a short walk away. I got my revenge on Mary for that woman. We had sex probably most of the night. I think it was even more than Evelyn expected. Honestly, it was the only time in my life that I cheated on Mary. I was so angry with her for what I thought she had done to me. The next morning, a cooler head took over. I called work and told them I wouldn't be in that day. Evelyn showered and said she had to go home. As for me, I wasn't sure what the future held for me. I headed home as I knew the kids would be at school, the younger ones at daycare, and Mary at work. I packed a couple suitcases and headed back to the motel. I sat there, drinking a beer and trying to figure out what I should do next. I knew that eventually I would have to talk to Mary. I almost wished I had stayed in the house and just beat the bastard up and dealt with Mary. Now I was left to wonder why he'd bolted so soon after I'd left. I'm sure I saw his hands on her ass. It was so stupid to leave my own home. My thoughts were working overtime. I went back to the bar and had dinner there, drank a few more beers and decided to go back to my room and get some sleep. The next day I had work to do. At work, Paul, a friend of mine, asked how I was doing. His wife Judy was friends with Mary. I figured he might know something. Judy asked me if you were at work yesterday. When I answered that I wasn't, she said that Mary told me that you and she had a fight. She wouldn't tell me what about, but she said it was just a big misunderstanding, and if I saw you, she said Mary needed to talk to you and straighten things out. I need a few days to think about it. Thank you for letting me know what Judy said. Right now, I'm just going to keep my problems to myself. No offense, Paul. I prefer not to meddle in other people's business. No offense. A couple days later, when I got home from work, Judy was already waiting to pick up Paul. Actually, I think Mary sent her to me. John, Mary said to tell you to call her if I see you. She needs to talk to you. John, I know Mary, and she's afraid you've mistaken what you've seen. She really loves you, John. No one else, only you. Please give her a chance to explain. She told me what happened, and I believe her. Thanks for getting the message to Judy, but I think it's between Mary and me. You're her friend. I think you'll be on her side. She didn't cheat on you, John. Trust me, if she had, I would never have sided with her. Just give her a chance to tell you what happened. Paul got out and got in the car. I'll see you tomorrow, John, he said. I waved him off and walked back to the motel. I called home and my oldest son, Jeff, answered the phone. I knew Mary hadn't come home yet, and I wanted to make sure the kids were okay. Daddy, where are you? When are you coming home? Mommy said you and her had a fight. Daddy, please come home. We all miss you. I'll be there in a couple days. I need a few days to clear my head before I talk to your mother. Is everything okay? Do you kids listen to your mom? Everything is fine, Daddy, except that Mommy is worried about you. Please come home soon. All the kids that were home were talking to me. Everyone was asking when I was coming home. I have to admit that even though it had only been a few days, I missed them. I went to get something to eat and stopped by the bar for a couple of beers. I thought about picking up a bar baba, but decided to refrain. I had already cheated on Mary that first night, and now I wasn't proud of it. I went back to my room. The next day at work, Dave, my supervisor, told me that I had gotten a call, and it was from Mary. She asked me to call her as soon as possible. We were always told that we shouldn't take calls at work unless they were very important. I wondered if any of the kids were sick, so I went and called Mary. It was her work number. Mary, what's the problem that you had to call me at work? I need to talk to you. You haven't called me, and I'm worried. You know we only get important calls at work. What do you want, Mary? This is a very important call, John. You see, I love you, and you never gave me a chance to tell me exactly what happened. Please come home after work so we can talk and let me tell you what really happened. The kids miss you, and so do I. I thought for a moment and decided we could lay the cards on the table. Okay, Mary, I'll come over tomorrow after work. No lies or bullshit, I want the truth. I promise to tell you the truth, John. I love you, she said, hanging up the phone. The children were happy to see me when I got home. They asked a lot of questions, but I managed to dodge them. Mary came home with the youngest child she had picked up from daycare. She looked happy to see me. I kept a stony expression on my face for the time being. We sent the children off to play, telling them we needed to talk. Some went outside and others went to their room to do homework. Mary and I went and sat on the back porch to be alone. As soon as we sat down, Mary said, "Nothing happened, I swear." Let me tell you what I know and have seen Mary. First, I called you to tell you I'd be home late. You reminded me that the kids are on an outing with the church. I was going to talk to you about that asshole Brad being too friendly with you at the reunion, but I didn't want to ruin your evening. I came home and found you in that asshole's arms with his hands on your ass. Let me explain, John, please? Let me finish, and then I'll listen to you. I tried to remain calm. Anyway, I have no idea what you two have already managed to do, or what might have happened if I hadn't shown up sooner. Now I'll listen to what you have to say. I was surprised that I remained so calm. Mary, on the other hand, was nervous and wanted to talk. I didn't do anything. Nothing special happened, and I wasn't going to. Brad was only here for 15 minutes. He came in and said he had an hour before he had to return the car and get on a plane home. He said he thought he'd stop by and have a cup of coffee with me. How did he know you'd be home alone? I asked. I don't know. Maybe we talked about your job or the kids going to church. I really don't know. I invited him in for a cup of coffee, and that was the end of it. When we sat down at the table, his conversation was a little personal. He started talking about how we traveled together and how he missed me and things like that. I told him that it was a long time ago and that I was very happily married and he should probably leave. I started to feel a little bad. We stood up. He took my hand and asked if he could at least be hugged and kissed goodbye. That made me smile. After all, he was an old friend of mine. I told him I could, but only on the cheek. He hugged me, and when I wanted to kiss his cheek, he turned his head, pulled me to him, and kissed me on the lips. I pushed him away, and he moved his hands down to my ass. Somewhere during that exchange you came in. You know what happened after that. As for the meeting, I was just having a good time with old friends. I didn't mean anything by it. I'm sorry if you perceived it differently. I love you, John, and I would never do anything to hurt our marriage. But I have to say that I was very hurt when you said that Jeff probably wasn't your child. In a fit of anger, we all say things we later regret, I replied. John, I swear to you that all of our children are yours. I haven't been with another man since the day I met you. And just so you know, it was Bart Benson I broke up with shortly before I met you, not Brad. Brad, I knew it started with a B. I'm just glad I hit him. I wish I'd hit him harder. I'm glad you hit him too. I don't want anyone coming between us. He got up off the floor as soon as you left and asked me for ice to put on his eye, but I told him to get out of my house and never come back. I told him he could buy ice at the store down the road. He wanted to apologize, but I told him to get out and not come back. When he left, I looked out the window and saw your car go by. I waited and waited for you to come back, but you never did. I was so worried. The kids asked about you when they got home. I told them you had gone to a friend's house. When you didn't come home the next day and I heard that you hadn't gone to work, I looked around and found that some of your things were missing. I sat down and cried. Honestly, John, I really didn't do anything wrong. I probably shouldn't have let Brad in, but I never thought he would try anything. Please forgive me. Mary began to cry. I hated to see her crying, so I took her in my arms. I really loved her, and I knew her well enough to believe she was telling me the truth. Hey, pack up the kids and go to McDonald's with them. She smiled at me, and I knew everything was going to be okay. That night in bed, we made love. We had to hold back a little bit because of the kids. I think that was the night Justin was conceived. A little over a year and a half later, our youngest, Sandy, was born. It was time for a vasectomy. 6 kids was enough, but we loved them all and they turned out great, thanks to Mary. Our sex life improved, but after Sandy was born, we cut it back a bit. There just wasn't enough time alone, or Mary was just too tired. She was willing for my sake, but I didn't push her. However, we did have some good sexual affairs from time to time. As for her reunions, I was at all of them with her, and she spent most of the time with me. Brad never made it to any of the reunions. There were rumors that he was divorced and remarried. I arrived at the hall where my retirement party was being held. I couldn't believe how many people showed up. Most of my close co-workers, many friends and neighbors, and some of our relatives were in attendance. All 6 of my offspring were there with their families. I couldn't help but burst into tears. The only person missing was Mary. I know she would have loved this party with all of our family and friends. Everyone was asking me about my future plans. I explained to them that I was working on a few ideas, but I was going to either sell or rent out the homestead. It was too big for one person. None of my children were interested in it. They preferred the city. The kids were a little surprised, but agreed that there were a lot of worries. For the last 2 years, they have come to see me whenever they could. But now, being retired, I will be alone 24/7. Another thing I noticed is that they visited me much more often when their mother was living. I'm not surprised, as who would want to visit an old person all the time? I know my children loved me, but they had their own families and their own lives. They invited me over to their house for dinner almost every Sunday. As Sandy, my youngest daughter, said, "You need to eat something other than Spam eggs." I told her that I loved Spam eggs and that it was easy for me to make. It was one of the few dishes I knew how to make. Breakfast usually consisted of cereal and toast. Lunch, when I ate out, consisted of meat sandwiches, and for dinner it was Spam eggs. At the party, I talked to Jeff and Justin, my 2 sons, about selling or renting the farm. Jeff was an accountant and Justin worked in real estate. They researched values and figures to help me decide what to do. I had a great time at the party and thanked everyone for attending. I knew I probably wouldn't see most of them again. I'm not one to run around visiting people, and I doubted most of them would come to visit me. Over the next month, I found a great place to live. It was in a gated residential area of a condominium. There were several vacant apartments. They were for rent to people at least 55 years old. The rent was $1,400 to $1,600 a month. You had to sign a lease for a minimum of 2 years. My son said the price was a little high, but it had many additional benefits. The question was, could I afford it? I called all my children together and explained to them that I was going to sell the farm. I got an offer of $1 million for all the land. The developer was going to build housing, and my neighbors had already agreed to sell. I bargained down the price I wanted. Since I was in the center of the development and had all the land, I got a great offer. The next month, we had an auction and sold almost all of our personal belongings. We had several pieces of farm equipment and tons of personal belongings. When all was said and done, I was able to give each of my children $100,000 and put the rest into investments and savings. Stuart, my third son, said I should keep the money to live on. I explained to him that it was part of their inheritance and decided they could all use it now. I know I could have done it at their age. I informed them that I was now receiving Social Security. I also receive a pension from Ford's, as well as a monthly check from my savings and security program that I started when I first started working. I rented an apartment in a mini village. It was really nice. There were 4 apartments. I don't know how many apartments there were in total, but a lot. I bought new furniture for my apartment, but I brought my favorite chair, which I bought at my own auction. My kids helped me move in, and after I put all my stuff on shelves and put it away in drawers, they went for a walk around the gated community. When they came back, they told me about the pool and hot tub. It's a pretty nice place, Dad, and it's also safe. We talked to some men from the community, and they told us they play housey, card game, on Tuesday nights and invited you to join them, Jeff said. I'll see Jeff. I've always enjoyed playing cards, I replied. Be careful with some of these women, Daddy, Sandy said. You don't want to get someone pregnant. She laughed. Mary always talked to the kids about safe sex. They all knew that after Sandy was born, I had a vasectomy. I said goodbye to the kids and told Julie I would see her the following Sunday. I had to write down on my calendar which kids I was to visit and when. The best part was that they were excited about my visit. That makes any father happy. When the condominium owner found out I was a former plumber, he asked me if I would work as a plumber for the condominium. Whenever a plumber was needed, he would call me. He said I would be paid $20 an hour and a minimum of an hour's work. I thought it would be a great idea that would give me something to do. The buildings were all only a few years old and mostly had leaky faucets and clogged toilets. It had a caretaker who did most of the necessary work, but he wasn't the best plumber. But I had a backup for emergencies. On my 3rd day in the apartment, I got my first plumbing job. A woman's grandson was trying to flush his plastic toy down the toilet. She was a friendly enough woman and apologized repeatedly. I told her it was no problem, that that's what I was here for. I had to lift up the dresser and found the plastic toy. I replaced the ring and used new bolts to attach the dresser. I finished the job in about 2 hours. It was a pretty easy $40 job. For the first 2 weeks, I called an average of 3 times a week. Most jobs took less than an hour. Tuesday night, I went to the community center and met some men playing cards. They told me that they got together every Tuesday to get away from their wives for a few hours. That week, there were 8 men playing cards. Of the men I met, only 1 was a widower. The next week, I went there again. Most of the men playing cards were retirees. Mostly businessmen, some of them still owned small businesses, but now others did most of the work. Funny were all the stories these men told. Mostly about their wives and how since they retired, they hardly get any rest. That was why some of them had moved into this nursing home. Now they had a lot less work to do. They talked about how women seem to argue over every little thing. They said things like, they just don't know how to enjoy life. Always arguing about something. I swear these men gossiped as much as the women. They talked about other women and how their wives get jealous if they look at divorced or single women for too long. They did not mind their husbands looking at married women. What about Nora? Bob asked. My wife didn't like me looking at her, even when she was married. And she's a looker. Bill replied, I used to dance with her, but after Rob died, my wife got jealous if I just talked to her. She doesn't come to the dance anymore and very rarely to the pool. She walks almost every morning, Ben says. She definitely keeps herself in shape. I still go to her to get my hair cut, but I tell my wife I go to the hairdresser. Me too, Glenn said. She's such a nice person. You should meet John. Maybe I will someday. She sounds pretty cute, I replied. I had no idea who they were talking about, but I just joined the conversation. Hey, John, do you like baseball? Ben asked. Yeah, I took my kids to games when they were growing up. Our committee has booked a bus trip to Cincinnati to watch the game in a couple of weeks. You have to sign up. For some of us, it's a day away from the wife. After he had said the last word, he said, Sorry, John, I keep forgetting you lost your wife, Ben replied. It's okay. I felt the same way when she was alive, but you don't know what you have until you lose it. I'll probably go to the game. 2 days later, I got another call. It was pretty late at night. Mrs. Norman said her sink was clogged. I told her that if it wasn't an emergency, I would come over in the morning around 8 o'clock, if that was all right with her. She agreed, and I went there first thing in the morning. The door was opened by a middle-aged woman. She looked about 40. I'm not good at guessing age, but this girl was a beauty. I figured Mrs. Norman must be her mother. Chapter 2. Starting a New Life. You must be John Mason, the plumber. I'm Nora Norman. Hi, nice to meet you. So you have a clogged sink? I asked. Yeah, I do my hair on the side, and I guess too much water has gone down the drain. It takes 10 minutes for the water to recede. And then it hit me that this could be the same Nora the card club guys were talking about. A separate room was set aside for her business. It had a special type of sink for washing hair. She turned on the faucet and showed me how the water wouldn't drain. The whole time she was showing me the problem, I couldn't help but stare at her. She was so beautiful. Not makeup on, but natural beauty. She was wearing white shorts and a blouse, but she looked sexy without even trying. Finally, I was able to take my eyes off her and kneel down to inspect the drain pipe. I got the pipe wrench and put a small bucket under the siphon, along with some old towels I had brought with me. I knew that as soon as I removed the siphon, the water in the sink would pour out of the pipe. I was just about ready to spring the trap when I looked back and Nora was smiling. Okay, what's so funny? I asked. I'm sorry, but I've always heard about plumbers and their butt cracks. When I thought about it, it made me laugh. You can't see mine! I wore a long shirt for that very purpose. I don't think people are interested in looking at an old man's ass. I chuckled myself. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have told you. It was very wrong of me, Nora said. That's okay. If you ever want to play show me yours and I'll show you mine, let me know. For now, I better get back to cleaning out this trap. Nora laughed as she left the room, and I continued my work. I turned the key and water rushed into the bucket. She was right, and the siphon was full of hair. I cleaned the siphon and cleaned the sink. I grabbed some old towels and cleaned up the spilled water. Nora came back and asked if I wanted a cup of coffee. I agreed, and after I finished my work, I joined her in the kitchen. I had so many questions for her, but I didn't know where to start. After all, she was just a client at this point. Mrs. Norman, is this your condo? I'm sorry for asking, and you can tell me to clean it if you want, but I thought you had to be at least 55 to live in these condos. I can't believe you are that old. When I first walked in, I thought it was your mom's condo. She smiled, which was a good sign. I also noticed that she was wearing a wedding ring. I wish I had seen it before I asked her something. First of all, please call me Nora, and this is my apartment for now. Thank you for the compliment about my age. You're right, I'm not 55, but 53. Well, your husband is very lucky to have such a beautiful wife. Rod, my husband, died last year. Then I remembered the men at the card club saying she was a widow. I'm so sorry, I don't know what to say. My wife died 2 years ago, and I think about her all the time. She touched my hand, and I felt a genuine warmth emanating from it. I'm sorry for your loss, too. I think we have something in common. Rod died in a plane crash last year. I took it very hard, even though we'd only been married a few years. It was my second marriage. She was not only pleasant to look at, but also easy to talk to. We drank probably a whole pot of coffee during the conversation. She explained to me that her husband was 55 when they bought the apartment 5 years ago. They had a 3-year lease, and 2 years ago renewed it for another 3 years. The problem was that the lease was expiring next year, and she was only 54 years old. The rules said you had to be 55, and she doubted if they would renew the lease when the time came. We talked for a while. She asked how long I had lived in this house, since she had never seen me before. I told her that I had only lived here for a few weeks and didn't know much about the neighborhood. She asked if I wanted her to show me around the neighborhood and tell me about some of the activities they do there. We agreed that she would take me on a tour the next day and even have lunch together at a local restaurant. I almost didn't want to leave, but she said she had an appointment with a hairdresser and some of the locals were already gossiping about her. The next morning, I showered, shaved, and put on one of my best shirts and dress pants. When I arrived at her apartment, she looked gorgeous. "Nora, I'm sorry, but I have to tell you that you look amazing," as my grandchildren would say. "You don't look too bad yourself," she smiled. I loved seeing her smile. It was so real. We started with a walk to the community center. I didn't tell her that I went there to play cards on Tuesdays. She explained that they also held dances and bingo there, and some men and women had card clubs. The center could be used for birthday parties and celebrations if someone wanted to take advantage of that. The family could always visit and even stay overnight in the apartments. But they could not live there permanently. "So, have you been to any of the dances around here?" I asked. "Rod and I used to go there every month. It was so much fun. After he died, I tried to go alone once, but a few of the local wives didn't like my presence. I guess they were afraid their husband would want to dance with me." "Silly old plums," I said, "but I can see why they might be jealous." This brought another smile to Nora's face. "Do you play bingo?" Nora asked. "No, I don't think so." I had to laugh. "Really, you should go and try it at least once. I'm sure you'll have fun. I'm more into sports." "Do you want to go to a game with me?" I joked, but it looked like she was thinking about it. "I'll make you a deal, John. You go to bingo with me on Saturday, and I'll go to a baseball game with you." I couldn't believe she was being serious. Why would this pretty woman want to go on a date with me? "Are you serious?" I asked. "Why me?" "John, since Rob's death, I haven't been anywhere but with my sister. I haven't dated a man in over a year. Somehow I feel like you understand me, and I'm willing to take a chance with you. I could use a friend." I realized she was serious. I haven't met anyone since Mary died either. I usually just attend family events, but I'm up for it if you want me to. We set a date to go play bingo on Saturday. I also told her that I was going to order tickets to the big league game next week. We left the center and she took me to the pool. She told me that the same rules apply at the pool. You can invite relatives, but you have to be with them while they are there. They also have 2 hot tubs in an enclosed building with changing rooms and everything. I asked if she used them and she again said no, not since Rob's accident. I pictured her in her bathing suit. I saw a smile on her face. She must have read my mind because she said, "Let's play bingo and baseball first and see what happens." After showing me the walkways and other places in the condo area, she said it was time to see the neighborhood. We got in her car and she showed me where the various stores and restaurants were located. She was good. I hadn't felt this way around any woman since I'd lost Mary. We went into a small cafe and had lunch. She said we would both pay for our lunch. "No, Nora, you've worked so hard to show me around, and lunch will be on me." "That won't be necessary." "I insist, Nora, I'm still old school. A man has to pay for his date. When we play bingo, you can pay for your card." We both laughed. "So you consider this a date?" Nora asked. "I don't know, it's been so long since I've asked a woman out." I have no idea why I felt intimacy with this woman. She was 9 years younger than me and looked even younger. She was beautiful, pleasant to be with, and fun to be with. I wanted to know something about her, but I didn't want to ruin my relationship with my newfound friend. We had lunch and talked some more. She told me a little about her life, and I told her a little about mine. Honestly, I have to say that opposites attract, at least in my case. Nora revealed that Rob was her second marriage. Before that, she had been married for over 20 years. Her husband was a company executive. He was often away from home, so she opened her own beauty salon to keep herself busy. She has a son who lives in Germany. She has seen him 3 times in the last 15 years. The first time was when he got married, and she and her husband flew in for the wedding. 4 years later, she flew to see her new grandson. The last time he came home was for his father's funeral. That was more than 7 years ago. After his death, she devoted all her time to the salon. It was at the salon that she met her second husband, Rob. He was a friend of her first husband. He was divorced and cut his hair at her salon. When he came there, he always asked Nora. They started dating and eventually got married. He was also a businessman, but he didn't travel as much. He retired early, and that's when they moved into an apartment. She sold her business but did her hair in her apartment. She also went to her friends' apartments and cut their hair there. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday were the only 3 days she worked. When I told her how good she looked, she mentioned that she always tries to keep herself in shape by walking or jogging almost every morning when her schedule allows. If you ever want to go for a walk in the morning, let me know. It's really good exercise and yet easy. Besides, it would be nice to not always walk alone. I told her I would keep that in mind. It would be a good way to see her more often. It'd be good for exercise too. Saturday afternoon, I went to Nora's apartment, which was a block away from mine. She met me at the door and we went to the community center to play bingo. I found it hard to believe I was doing this. I didn't play bingo except with my kids when they were little. I was always the ringleader. I never thought about playing bingo for real, although Mary used to go there from time to time. I guess it's just not manly. There were a lot of people there. There were probably 90% women, but at least there were a few men. I only saw one whom I met when I was fixing his leaky faucet. Many of the women were happy to see Nora, but they were even more surprised that she was with a man. While she was talking to a couple of women, I got in line for a bingo card. A couple minutes later, Nora was standing behind me and smiling. As I approached the counter, the man asked, "How many cards, sir?" "Just one," I replied. He looked at me strangely as I handed him $1 for the card. I stood back as Nora pulled out her cards. "16, please," she said. I couldn't believe it. How the hell was she going to go through 16 cards? Now I felt stupid since I only had one. I asked the guy for another card and gave him another $1. Nora smiled. Nora and I found a table where she sat across from me. When she had laid out all her cards, I asked her how she managed to keep track of all of them. She laughed and said, "I usually play 24, but I thought we could have a little talk, so I ordered less." The game started, and Nora had no trouble at all. We played 7 games and I didn't even come close to bingo. A couple of times I didn't dot my number, and Nora noticed it and dotted it for me. The next game I had to get a B5 to play bingo. I was ecstatic until B6 came up and some old broad shouted bingo. I know I got mad and cursed under my breath. It made Nora laugh and of course me. I went out and bought us both a drink. While I was gone, Nora was playing cards. I heard her yell bingo on the way back. "Did you win?" I asked. "No, it's you," she replied. I looked down and saw that I was level. A few games later, Nora played bingo. I ended up winning $2 and Nora was left with a minus. I reminded her that next Saturday we would take the bus to the ball game. "John, will you go to the mall with me on Monday? I want to buy a Reds jersey to wear to the game." Not only was I playing bingo, but I was going shopping with Nora on Monday. It was then that I began to realize that I really liked this woman. On Sunday, I had dinner with one of my kids. When they asked me how I liked my new place, I said I liked it a lot. I didn't bother to tell them about Nora, but I did tell them that I play cards on Tuesday nights and was going to a baseball game the following Saturday. They were very happy for me. On Monday, I showed up at Nora's at 9 in the morning. "John, what are you doing here so early? The stores won't open for another hour or two?" I decided to settle for a walk. I decided to try it on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. "Oh, John, I wish you'd say something." "I just got back from a walk. I usually walk around 7 in the morning. I'm so sorry. Do you want to come in for coffee?" I saw that she was sweating in her tracksuit and figured she was getting ready to take a shower. "No, I'll just be back in an hour and we can head to the mall. I think I need a good pair of walking shoes anyway." By the time I got back, she was completely fine. I went inside and had a cup of coffee before heading to the mall. We went to a sports store where she was looking at different sports shirts. She found one she liked and went to try it on. When she came out of the fitting room, she looked like a young girl. The shirt was red, buttoned in the front, and had Cincinnati written on the chest. She was also wearing a baseball cap with the Cincinnati logo on it. "So, how do I look?" She smiled at me. "You look like a teenager going to your first major league game. I think you should undo a couple buttons on your top." I smiled. "John, this will show my breasts." She looked around to make sure no one was looking and undid the top 3 buttons. Is that better? She laughed and quickly buttoned 2 back up. But not before I saw her breasts covered by her bra. Okay, perv, let's find you a shirt and a pair of walking shoes. I ended up buying a pullover with the Reds emblem on it. I couldn't believe I'd paid $65 for a pair of sneakers just to walk around in them. Nora assured me that if I walked regularly, I'd be glad I'd bought a good pair. We had lunch and I learned more about Nora. She had 2 sisters and a brother. One sister, Lynn, and her brother Max live in a condominium. Lynn is with her spouse and Max was divorced. Neither of them I was acquainted with as far as I knew. Nora asked me if we could sit with her sister and her husband Dave. They were going to the game too. I was a little surprised, but at the same time glad that she had relatives living there. It would be great to meet them. The bus trip went like this. Everyone who signed up got a ticket to the game, which was handed out after boarding the bus. All the tickets were grouped together in one place, so there would be no problem getting tickets to sit together. When Nora and I got on the bus, the guys from the card club couldn't believe it. Sure enough, they all said hello to Nora and Lynn. There were only 2 other women on the bus. I have to admit that I felt like the king of the hill when I sat down with Nora. I know I had a grin on my face that looked like a grin. Why are you smiling like that? Nora asked. Being with you and seeing the faces of the card club guys when they saw us together. Nora just smiled, and I had no idea what she was thinking. During the bus ride, Dave asked me how Nora and I met. She called me one night and asked if I could clean her pipes, and I agreed. We all started laughing because of the way it sounded. I laughed and got a punch in the arm from Nora. He's a plumber from the condo association, and yes, he cleaned my pipes. She looked a little embarrassed when she realized she'd said pretty much the same thing I had. They were clogged, she said, continuing to laugh. It was the beginning of a wonderful day. I couldn't believe how happy she was at the game. She was cheering for the Reds and supporting them. She even had a beer and a hot dog with me and sang, "Take me out to the ball game" with everyone in the 7th inning. As we rode the bus home, she got a little tired and put a pillow on my shoulder and leaned against me. Lynn did almost the same thing with Dave. Sunday, we went back to one of the children's homes for dinner. I told them about the game, but I never mentioned Nora. I just wasn't sure what to say if they started asking questions. Monday morning, I was at Nora's apartment ready for a walk. She seemed happy to see me. We walked about 2 miles. Nora usually ran about 5 miles when she was alone. On the days we walked together, she ran 3 miles in the evening. We were the talk of all the neighbors in the condo, and yet we were just friends. We held hands during games and sat across from each other at bingo. We joked around but never did anything sexual. I can't say I didn't want to, but I was more afraid of losing my friend if I tried and failed. The next month we went to a museum, an art institute, and another ball game. We decided it would be fair to take turns doing something the other person enjoyed. Nora was a sophisticated woman and appreciated many forms of art. She used to go with Lynn, but now she went with me. I couldn't believe how much I enjoyed some of the art museums. When we were coming home after the ball game, Lynn asked Nora if she was going to the dance next weekend. She hadn't gone there since she lost her husband. Looking at me, I realized she was ready to ask if I was dancing. I'm not very good on my feet, but if you need a date, I'll go. I'd never been much into dancing, but this was another chance to help build a relationship with Nora. I really took my time. I've noticed that my thoughts of Mary diminish as my thoughts of Nora increase. I guess that's just the way life is. It got me thinking about how much better our marriage to Mary could have been if we had spent more time together. Instead, we were going to wait until I retired. What a mistake. Lynn was a good-looking woman and a couple years older than Nora. She was a little heavier since she didn't exercise like Nora did. Dave had retired from a management position at a large manufacturing firm. They seemed to really enjoy their life together. I mention this because I got a lot of my information about Nora from Lynn. She and her sister were best friends, even if they didn't agree with each other on everything. When we entered the dance hall, Nora and I again caught everyone's attention. Admittedly, Nora looked great, but she wasn't overly dressed up. She just looked good in any outfit. The 4 of us sat down at a table and Dave ordered drinks. He and I each got a beer, and the women got diet sodas. We went through the first couple of fast songs, after which a slow song played. The first time I held Nora in my arms, it was now or never. I moved around as best I could, and she followed me with no problem. I wasn't sure how close to hold her until she said, "John, you can hold me closer, I don't mind." I pulled her to me and told her how beautiful she looked and smelled. She smiled, thanked me, and said I didn't look too bad myself. I was almost angry when the song ended. The stupid band played 2 more fast songs, and Lynn and Nora danced together. Dave and I had another beer and watched them. It was nice to see them having fun and laughing. On the next slow song, I danced with Nora again. I pulled her to me and hugged her in the old traditional way, one arm around her waist and the other reaching forward. She let go of my arm and wrapped both arms around my neck. I put both arms around her. "I like this way much better," she said. "Couldn't agree with you more," I replied. We danced to 2 songs in a row before sitting down at the table. The next song was a fast song, and I went to get us all another drink. When I got back to the table, another slow song started. Some guy came up and asked Nora to dance. Dave and Lynn were dancing too. A feeling of jealousy swept over me. I remembered dancing with Mary, the way she smiled at other men while dancing. It happened again with Nora. When the dance ended and everyone went back to the table, I threw a lewd look at the guy. Nora didn't see it, but Lynn did. I tried to act normal, but my thoughts were not normal. I finished my beer during the next song. When another slow one started, Lynn asked me to dance and told Dave to dance with Nora. "John, I need to talk to you. Nora is my sister and tells me almost everything. I saw how jealous you were when she was dancing with another man. Try not to be jealous. I know it's hard, but it's just a dance. She really cares about you." "We're just good friends, Lynn," I replied. "Bullshit. I said she cares about you, and I know her better than anyone else, including her past husbands. You don't have to ruin everything over a stupid dance. If someone tried to do something to her, trust me, she'd let them know it. It's just a dance, it doesn't mean anything. Look at her, and then look at me. Why should she care about a retired plumber? John, stop downplaying yourself. Just because you weren't a big businessman doesn't mean anything. Believe it or not, you're a decent guy, with a great personality, and you're fun to be with. Nora is a special woman. She's not good on her own. I mean, her first 2 husbands weren't that good? She was candy to them. Yes, they liked her, mostly because of her personality and looks. They were both cheating on her, and when she found out, she came to me. She decided to just live the best life she could. So she opened her salon in case her husband found a better place. She is an only woman and has never cheated on any of her husbands. God knows she could have had any man she wanted. She ran her salon, took care of Jason, her son, and played the role of dutiful wife at all the engagements. As they say, what goes around comes around. Her first husband was a playboy and racked up a lot of debt. After paying off all his debts and last expenses, she didn't have much left. Good thing she had a salon. She inherited a lot of money after her second husband died. The song stopped and they started another slow one, and we kept dancing. I saw Nora looking at me. She and Dave were still dancing, and I waved, and she smiled and waved back. Lynn continued to speak. She stayed with her first husband mostly because of Jason. He idolized his father. I don't think he ever knew he was abusing his mother. When her husband died, Jason took it hard. When she remarried, he wouldn't even talk to her. He finally returned her call when she wanted to socialize with her grandchildren. She has 2 of them, but she has never seen them. Jason joined the Marines and was stationed in Germany. He met his wife there and decided to stay there. Nora wanted to visit him and his family, but Jason forbade her to come. After Rod died, he started contacting her again. I think she wants to try to get back in touch with Jason. She married Rod out of convenience. He was a little better than Jim, but he was a playboy too. We thought he'd settle down when they moved into the condo and only work part-time, but later it turned out he was playing around on the side. In fact, he wasn't alone in the plane crash that killed him. It was one of his affairs. Why are you telling me all this? It's none of my business. John, you care for Nora very much. I can see it in the way you look at her. I also know that she cares about you too. All I ask is that you don't hurt her. She's been through enough. If you want to date other women or anything else, don't tie Nora to you. The song ended before I could respond. I had no idea what Nora was going through. It made me want her even more. Lynn, what have you been chatting about for 2 whole dances? Your lips were moving at a mile a minute. Nora asked. I told him what a spoiled brat you were when we were growing up and always got your way because you were the youngest, Lynn replied. That's not true. You and Max used to tease me all the time, Nora said, and they both laughed. About that time, Ray from the card club came up and asked Nora to dance. She looked at me and said, Thanks, Ray, but I promised this dance to John, maybe later. Needless to say, no promise was made, but I quickly stood up and took Nora under my arm. Later, Ray danced with Nora. She had already made it clear that she was with me. Now I felt not jealousy, but pride. I looked at Lynn and she smiled at me. When Nora returned to the table, Lynn said she had an idea. Let's leave this dancing and go to the hot tub. No one will be there this late and the party people are already here. You're out of your mind, Lynn. We can't just leave like this, Nora replied. Why not? It's open 24/7. And when I danced with John, he said he wondered what you looked like in a bathing suit, Lynn remarked, laughing. Nora looked at me. Is it true, John? Which part? Did I say that or would I like to see you in a swimsuit? I smiled. You're both bad. Mom always said you were the black sheep of the family, Nora told her sister. So let's leave this place and meet at the hot tub in 15 minutes, Lynn replied. She didn't wait for an answer. She and the smiling Dave got up and prepared to leave. Nora looked at me. So you want to do this? Honey, I'd be crazy if I didn't want to see you in a swimsuit. I didn't realize I had called her sweetheart. We got up and left as well. I drove past my house, ran in there and got my swim trunks, and then we went to her apartment to change. I changed in the bathroom and she changed in her bedroom. She put on a robe before I could see her. I put on a t-shirt and swim trunks. I can't believe we're doing this, Nora said. Oh, it's like being teenagers again, except there's no one stopping us, I replied. When we got there, Lynn and Dave were already in the hot tub. I took off my t-shirt and Nora took off her robe. Shit, I said. I bet you'll look good even without the robe. I think Nora blushed. I don't know why I said it, but I guess I was thinking out loud. You're almost as bad as Lynn, Nora said to me. I laughed. I helped Nora into the hot tub. Oh, that feels so good, Nora said as Dave turned on the bubbles. After talking to Lynn, I had gotten braver. I sat down next to Nora, put my arm around her shoulders and put my hand on the rail of the hot tub. I couldn't believe it when Nora lowered herself down and rested her head on my hand. It was dark in the hot tub, with only a light on in the tub itself. It gave just enough light for me to see how beautiful Nora was. After about a half hour, we decided it was time to head back to the condo. We said goodnight to Lynn and Dave and headed to Nora's place. When we got to her apartment, I went to change. Before I reached the bathroom, Nora called out to me. I turned around and she came up to me and kissed me. It was a soft, wonderful kiss. John, I know you care about me and I care about you. I believe that if we want to be together, I need to be the one to start doing it. Nora, I wanted you almost from the first time I met you. I just didn't want to risk ruining our friendship. You mean too much to me. She kissed me again and asked me to take off my swim trunks and meet her in the bedroom. I took off my swim trunks, put on my underwear, and went to her room. The lights were dimmed and she was still in her robe. John, I want our relationship to move to the next stage. If you feel the same way, I want you to make love to me. If you feel you're not ready, I understand. I just went up to her and did it. Made her best day ever. It felt so good. After sex, she rolled off me and lay down next to me. John, would you like to stay with me tonight? There's nothing I want more, I replied. She got up, turned off the light, snuggled up to me and laid her head on my shoulder. I was happy. When I woke up the next morning, I must admit I was a little confused. After dancing the night before, everything seemed so fast. I put on my underwear and went into the kitchen. Nora was dressed in her tracksuit. Good morning, Nora said. Did you sleep well? Nora, what exactly happened last night? I know we made love, but what really happened between us? She poured me a cup of coffee and we sat down and talked. John, you are so different from my previous husbands. You are kind, considerate, honest, and fun to be with. I felt a strong attraction to you, especially after the first match you invited me to. You didn't just want to see if you could grab a piece of ass. You really wanted to be with me. We became friends, good friends. I was sure you liked me by all the things you did, but you didn't even try to kiss me. That's because I didn't want to risk ruining our relationship. If I tried to kiss you and got rejected or disappointed you, our friendship would change. You are the best thing that has happened to me, and I was afraid of losing you. I thought you might think that, and that's why Lynn and I set up the whole hot tub thing. I didn't know how to approach you either. John, I don't know where this relationship will lead, but I care about you very much. The time we spend together is the best part of my day. I want us to continue to be best friends and do things together. The only commitment I ask of you is to be honest with me. If things don't work out between us, I want you to tell me so. I need commitment too, I said. Nora, I'm a little jealous of other men. Yes, I've seen it a few times when men look at me. Especially last night when I was dancing with another man. I will not become a hermit and socialize with other men. I promise you that no man will raise his hand on me. I am a woman of one man, and I want that man to be you. If you think I'm overstepping my boundaries, I ask you to tell me so. That sounds fair enough. Can I tell anyone that we're more than friends, or do you want to keep it between us? I asked. In case you haven't noticed, everyone already knows. I'd ask that our bedroom antics remain just between us. You mean we're going to do it again? I smiled. Whether you know it or not, you're a real lover. It was Sunday, and I had to visit one of the kids today. Nora said she would go out for her morning run and close up when I got dressed. The next morning, she would see me on our usual walk. She kissed me lightly and walked out the door. Tonight, I went to dinner at Justin's house. I have to admit that Mary and I did a great job with our kids. I've always felt welcome in their homes. Hi, Daddy, my sister-in-law Amber said to me. You look happy today. That's life, as old Frankie would say. I started humming part of his song. I have been a puppet, a beggar, a pirate, a poet, a pawn, and a king. I've been both up and down here and there, and I know one thing. Amber laughed. Okay, Dad, I know this is your favorite song and you're in a good mood. I'm glad to see that. Tonight we're going to grill steaks. Justin is cooking outside. Julie and her family will be here today too. I went outside and said hello to my son. About that time, Julie and her family arrived. We had a good time, and Amber asked me how things were going at the new place. Things are going great. I've met some new friends and go to different places. I do a few plumbing jobs every week to keep me busy. I belong to a card club and play almost every Tuesday, and I go for a walk with a friend 3 mornings a week. That's so nice to hear, Daddy, Julie said. You look happy and you deserve a good life. By the way, I'm having a big party at my house next Sunday. The whole family will be there. Can I bring a friend? I asked. She's my walking partner, and we go to different places together. Are you dating, Dad? Yes, I have a friend who lives in this neighborhood. Her name is Nora, and she's a widow. I'd like you to meet her. Sounds serious, Dad. How long have you known her? Justin asked. What are you guys going to do, grill me now? Look, I met her a few months ago. We go to events together on association bus trips. It's better than going alone. We've become good friends, and I want to introduce her to my family. Why didn't you tell us about her before, Daddy? Julie asked. That's exactly the reason. I don't like answering questions. You can ask her all the questions you want next week if she comes over. We're just good friends. I'm sorry, Daddy, Julie said. Of course she can come over. It was a surprise to me to find out you were dating. We all want you to be happy. Monday morning, as we were taking our morning walk, I told Nora about a family event at my kids' house on Sunday and asked if she wanted to come. I must tell you that I have never brought a woman to meet my family. They would probably ask you 1,000 questions. They're good kids, but they're protective of me, I suppose. Nora smiled. I would love to go with you. Is there anything I should know before talking to them? I just told them we walked together and went on bus tours together. I didn't tell them we made love. Nora gave me a beautiful smile. I hope not, but they've probably already guessed that you invited me. We're not kids anymore, and I know your kids can guess the rest. What should we bring with us? What do you mean? It's a potluck. The kids cook for themselves. That's because all you can cook is Spam and eggs. They won't want to see that at the feast. When you talk to your daughter, tell her we'll bring sweet potatoes and I'll make some kind of jello salad. I didn't say anything more on the subject because what could I say? I called Julie and told her what Nora had said we were bringing. That would be great, Dad. Please thank her for me. I can't wait to meet her. Wednesday night, I had a plumbing job 3 houses down from Nora's house. It was early evening and I figured she would be done with her hair for the day, so I decided to stop by her place. I figured I would just walk, since it was only 3 houses away. I put my things in the truck and went to her house. When I got in front of her house, I saw that the door was open. Right outside the door stood Nora, hugging a man in a suit. She was smiling and looked very happy. The first thing I felt was the memory of catching Mary. I wanted to turn around and walk away, but this time I decided to follow through. As I started up the stairs, Nora smiled at me. I didn't realize anything. I'd just caught her cuddling with that man. John, what are you doing here? She let go of her friend and they both looked at me. Before I could answer, what the hell are you doing? Nora said. John, I want you to meet another special person in my life. This is my brother Max. He came in for a haircut. He travels a lot and I rarely see him. Max, this is John, a very good friend of mine. Nice to meet you, John. He extended his hand for a shake. After recovering from my bad thoughts, I told him I was glad to meet him too. So what brings you here, John? Nora asked. I'm having renovations a couple houses down from here, so I thought I'd stop by for a few minutes. I wish I could stay and talk, but I have to get ready for another trip. John, it was nice to meet you. Take care of my little sister. She deserves a good life, he said, smiling. Honey, you look so happy. I love seeing you like this. Take care of yourself. She hugged him again and kissed him lightly. As he was leaving, Nora told me that I should probably move my truck into her car. I went and got it and parked it in her driveway. When I walked in the door, I was greeted with a very firm kiss. John, I saw the look on your face when you saw me hug Max. I want you to know that behind your back, I would never do anything to hurt you. Never! Nora, I want to see you more often. Maybe have dinner twice a week or watch TV together. I know we see each other 3 times a week in the mornings and together on Saturday, but I want to see you more often. I'd like to see you more often too, John. How about Monday and Thursday evenings? We can have dinner here or go out to eat. We can rent movies or just watch TV. Tuesday you already have card club, and Wednesday I have women's card club. Friday I spend with my sister, Saturday we spend together, and Sunday you get together with your family. That sounds great. I'll come over tomorrow around 6, I replied. We'll go to that little diner and then rent a movie. I kissed her goodnight and headed home for scrambled eggs and Spams. She had a card club. The next night when we went to the diner, I asked her what movie she wanted to see. I liked action movies and she liked romantic stories. We decided we would take a comedy. We got back to her house and she said she was going to wear something more comfortable. When I saw her in her doll pajamas, we hadn't had time to watch most of the movie. We were sitting on the couch and she put her legs in my lap. I kept looking at her and she asked me if I liked the movie. When I put my hand on her thigh, we both realized that we weren't going to watch the movie. We started making love right there on the couch. I guess I'm not as young as I used to be, she smiled. Nora, I think you know I'm in love with you. I just wanted you to know. I know, John, I feel the same way about you. Chapter 3. Getting to know the children. I picked up Nora and we went to Julie's. Nora brought her set dishes. She really looked well, as she always did. As we pulled up to the house, the younger grandchildren came running out to the car. Hi, Grandpa, Ashley said. She had just turned 4 years old. After giving me a hug and a kiss, she looked at Nora. Are you my new grandma? She asked. Nora smiled at Ashley. No, sweetie, I'm just a good friend of your grandfather's. You can call me Nora if you want. Ashley took Nora's hand and walked with her to the backyard. I got in the car and brought food. You can see that Julie was surprised when she first saw Nora. I think she expected to see a much older woman. She was nice to her, though, and introduced her to everyone as my friend. Julie gave me a strange look but greeted me anyway. My son Jordan came up to me and asked me a few questions about Nora. Dad, she seems really nice and no doubt good-looking, but she seems pretty young. Is she a girl or just a friend? Jordan was my very open-minded son. He never beat around the bush. Yes, she is beautiful, very sweet, and my girlfriend. I take great care of her. She's older than she looks because she takes care of herself and exercises every day. She looks about 40 to me. How old is she, Dad? Jordan, you can be a pain sometimes. Just so you know, she's 53. Damn, Dad, I hope Ellen looks as good when she turns 53. At that moment, Ellen walked over to me and looked at Jordan. Hi, Daddy, she said to me and kissed me. What will I look like at 53? She asked Jordan. Daddy's friend Nora is 53. I just told Daddy I hope we look as good at 53. He added we, so as not to get the wrong idea. She does seem nice, Daddy. I'm happy for you, Ellen replied. All of my children's spouses called me Daddy. It felt good. I decided I'd better sit with Nora. She was sitting there with half a dozen kids asking her questions. That's the thing about little kids. They love attention from adults. Nora smiled when I sat down and told me all the things my grandchildren had talked to her about. Justin walked over and gave Nora a wine cooler and me a beer. A few minutes earlier, he had asked Nora if she wanted something to drink. He always knew to just get me a beer. A few older kids, preteens, came up and started talking to me and Nora. They told us about playing ball and asked Nora if she wanted to come and watch them play. Nora looked at me. It all depends on your grandfather. Let me talk to him and we'll see if we can do a couple games. The kids were thrilled. Julie yelled to everyone that it was time to eat. This gave Nora and me a little break, and after we ate, we were able to talk. During dinner, everyone asked Nora questions about where she lived, if she worked, and so on. She was so sweet and tried to answer their question. I must say that the children did ask in a kind way. Nora also had a knack for turning the conversation around and asking the kids about their lives and families. She was a very sweet woman. The children told Nora that they liked her sweet potato and jelly dish. She told them that she loves to cook, but being alone doesn't do it often. It's no fun to cook just for yourself, she said. Daddy, did you hear her? She likes to cook and you like to eat. Sounds like a good combination. Nora, can you make scrambled eggs with Spams? That's Daddy's favorite dish, Justin said. Of course, everyone started laughing. We took a walk after the meal, and she asked me about seeing some of the grandchildren's games and other things at their school. John, I would love to go to different school events with you. I know we won't be able to attend all of them since you have 18 grandchildren so far, but we could make a calendar and attend some of the events. I've wanted to go to some of their events, but ever since Mary died, I've hated going alone and just stopped. I'd love to go, especially with you by my side. I know Nora missed her 2 grandchildren who lived in Germany. It was as if she wanted to adopt mine. When we returned to the picnic, Nora explained to the children that she and I would be coming to some of their activities. They each had to give us a copy of their schedules for their games and other activities, such as band and choir concerts. She told them that there was no way we would be able to attend all the events, but we would see as many as we could on the free evenings. They all ran to their moms and asked for a schedule of events. We all knew that mothers always have a little calendar, or in today's society, an e-book to keep track of daily activities. All the children were getting their schedules from their mothers. Nora realized the commotion and told the children to go play, and she would talk to their mothers and get their schedules. All the moms seemed relieved. Nora would sit with each of my children or sister-in-law and go over each child's schedule. She entered it into her own electronic device. She entered the date, the child, the activity, and the time. She and I had to decide which ones we could attend. The women were putting the food away, and the boys couldn't help but talk about Nora. Dad, I'm very happy for you. All I ask is that you take your time. I'd hate for you to get hurt, Jordan said. How can I get hurt? We're friends, good friends. We go to different places together and even go out a few times a week. Dad, I think what Jordan means is that you've never met Mom since she died over 2 years ago. And then a beautiful woman shows up and you're attracted to her. We don't want you to get hurt, Justin said. Okay, I think I see what you're saying. I do have a thing for Nora, but trust me, we'll take it slow. Right now, we're just good friends. Hopefully, it can become something more. Dad, we mean the financial side. We're hoping she's not just looking for someone to take care of her. She told us she works as a hairdresser, and I doubt she makes that much money part-time. I started to laugh. What's so funny? Justin asked. There are a lot of women, good-looking women, who are out to get a man who has money. Justin, you're reasoning like a banker. Let me give you a big surprise. Nora's net worth is 3 or 4 times mine. Half the time she pays for herself, and sometimes she pays for me. She does her hair because she likes it, just like I do plumbing on the side. I'm sorry, Dad, we didn't know. We've been worried about you since Mom died. We should have realized you were capable of taking care of yourself, Stuart replied. It's okay, boys. I'm glad to know you're still worried about me, but trust me, I'm fine, and Nora is one of the best things that's happened to me in a long time. If our relationship doesn't last, then it wasn't meant to be. Don't ever be afraid to talk to me. I'm actually glad we talked. Dad, I think Nora is a very nice woman and very pleasant to look at, Jordan replied. All the other boys agreed. Jordan smiled and asked, Dad, how's your sea... Don't even think about it, I laughed. But it's great. About that time, all the women went back outside and we played in the yard. On the way home, Nora told me that she loved my family, and I told her that they loved her too. She said I needed a BlackBerry or something to keep track of events with my grandchildren. I told her blackberries are a fruit you eat. I will buy a calendar and write the information on it. That made Nora laugh and I loved to see her happy. We stopped at my house and she came in and took my calendar and transferred all the information my kids had given her into it. Nora, you don't have to do that. Go on walks with my grandchildren. John, I really want to. I really like children, and your presence will make them so happy. Of course, it will give me more time to be with you. She leaned over and kissed me. Once we figured it out, we started getting together on Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays to attend the kids' games and activities. Saturday was our day to do things together, but if any of the kids had things to do, we were there. For the next few months, life was good. We often attended the children's games. On Tuesdays and Wednesdays, when I didn't see Nora, I cooked Spam eggs. We both had our own card clubs. Most often, we had dinner out of the house, but at least once a week, Nora cooked dinner. On top of all her other virtues, this woman could really cook. Sexually, we made love on average once a week. I have to say that we cuddled a lot, and I rubbed against her body quite often. I really missed her when I wasn't with her. On Sundays, I still went to the children's house. Nora started seeing her sister on that day, since we were always away on Fridays. On special occasions, we were always together. Nora was always a topic of conversation when I visited the kids for dinner. Once, when Nora was with me at a family event, Stuart asked me how Nora decided to be with me. Son, you'll have to ask Nora about that, I replied. Nora walked over and saw me smiling. Okay, what's so funny? My son Stuart wants to know why a gorgeous, wonderful, and nice woman like you wants to be with a guy like me. Dad, that's not what I said. It's just... I know, son, I think so too. Okay, guys, Nora said. Stuart, your father is a wonderful, caring man. He treats me with love, respect, and dignity. He's also a very handsome man. You may not see him that way, but believe me, many women do. I was drawn to him the first time I saw him. We had both lost spouses, and he treated me with the greatest kindness and respect. Neither of us were looking, but we were pretty much alone. We bonded and became best friends. And then we became lovers. Nora laughed and kissed me. Stuart was almost speechless. It was too much for a woman, especially a woman like Nora, to call his 62-year-old father her lover. All I can say is that Dad was very lucky, Stuart said and walked away. Did you mean everything you said? I asked Nora. Sure, especially about the lover. Nora smiled and kissed me again. Julie saw us kissing and said, Okay, kids, maybe you two should get a room. We all laughed. Time passed, and life was better than ever. One day I stopped by Nora's house and she seemed sad. What's the matter, dear? I asked. She handed me a letter. It said that the condo association had held a meeting and it wouldn't be able to renew the lease. There was a lot of nonsense in there, but they stated that the tenant had to be 55 years old. Of course, Nora had to be 53 and 54 at the end of the lease. They wrote a personal note and said they had nothing against Nora, but if they changed the rules for her, they would open a can of worms. However, they will put her name on the waiting list after she turns 55. I told her not to worry, it would all work out. I decided to attend the next meeting of the association. Nora came with me. I told them who I was. Mr. Mason, we know you're here on behalf of Nora Norman, but there's nothing we can do. I'm sorry, but that's the situation. Sir, I understand your decision and have no problem with it. Nora looked at me in surprise. I'm here to ask if I can change apartments in the middle of my contract. I'd like to rent Nora's apartment. It's bigger than mine, and I like the location better. The council looked surprised, but looked at their rules and told me that yes, I could change apartments, but I would have to sign a new 3-year lease. Nora sat in silence, puzzled as to what I was doing. Mr. Mason, no one under 55 can live with you. He knew where I was going. Figuring I'd ask Nora to live with me. That's not quite true, sir. As far as I understand it, my wife need not be 55. Am I right on that point? I asked. Yes, Mr. Mason, that is true, but you and Mrs. Norman are not married. We will when her lease is up if she agrees. Nora looked at me and burst into tears. The council smiled. They liked Nora, but rules had to be followed. In that case, we will transfer the apartment into your name when the lease expires. Your current housing will need to be evacuated within a specified time frame. We hope you are to be congratulated, and of course we will need to see the marriage certificate. Nora was still crying as we left the meeting. So, will you give me an answer? Will you marry me and make me the happiest man in the world? I thought you said you'd never marry again, John. That was before I knew you. After Mary died, life was lonely, and I never thought I could love another person. And then I met you. Nora, you are my life now. I know I have children and grandchildren, and I love them all, but you are the one special person in my life, and I want to be with you until the day I die. Don't talk about death. I want to spend my whole life with you. I've never met anyone as kind as you. And I might also add that I've never had a better lover. Everything I said to your son Stuart that day is true. I do love you, and yes, I will marry you. I called all the relatives and told them we would have a family reunion at the condo next Sunday. No excuses, just be there. It was the first time the whole family was at the condo at the same time. We had great food, with Nora making almost everything herself. The kids enjoyed playing in the pool and swimming in the hot tub. It's time for my announcement. So I have something to say. Nora and I are getting married. The kids smiled. It's not that big of a surprise, Daddy, Julie said. We knew it was coming, but we didn't know when. We all love Nora and wish you both the best. So when is it going to happen? It should be by the end of next month. Nora's lease is just about to expire. I know it may seem strange, but we want a church wedding. You can coordinate all the details with Nora. For the reception, I'm renting the hall here. Nora and I have contacted a local caterer, and they're available. They just need an approximate number of guests. We don't have time to send out invitations, so invite anyone you see fit. Just let us know how many people are coming. Nora will take care of her friends and family. I knew the kids were happy for Nora and me. She said she would invite her brother and sisters and their families. Lynn had 2 married children and 2 grandchildren. Nora would invite her son, but knew he wouldn't be there. She said her brother Max might marry her off. Max was divorced, but he also had a daughter and 2 grandchildren. They would try to come. The other sister lives out of state and probably won't be able to come. It was amazing how quickly everything came together. We went to a small church and the pastor agreed to marry us. The date and time were set. I went to the association and rented a clubhouse for the wedding reception. While I was there, I invited the committee to the wedding. Nora said Max, Lynn, and their families would be coming. She emailed her son Jason but never got a response. I know she wanted to develop a more friendly relationship with her son. He just resented her for remarrying so soon after his father died. I got his phone number and decided to call him when I was alone. He was a little cold at first, but I told him that I had 6 children of my own and 18 grandchildren. I told him how much his mom loved him and how sad she was sometimes when she thought about her grandchildren and him. I informed him of our upcoming wedding, which was 3 weeks away. I told him that I would like him to come and marry my mother. Mr. Mason, Jason said. Please call me John, I replied. Well, John, although I'd like to come, I'm afraid we just don't have the money. I'm sorry. Jason, I really want you to be here. I am willing to pay your airfare and expenses while you are here. Your family can stay in my apartment as they will be staying with me for another month. Your only expenses will be what you spend while here. He seemed like a nice enough person and told me he wanted to talk to his wife and would contact me the next day. He called back and accepted my offer. He said that neither his wife nor his children had ever been to the United States. He also told me that he missed his mother very much and would be happy to attend the wedding. I told him I wanted to surprise Nora and that we would meet him and his family at the airport. I telegraphed him $5,000 to make reservations. I also thought he might want to rent a car so he would have something to drive during the week. I booked the car for him. In time, everything fell into place. Nora told me that she had received a letter from her son. He wrote to her that he missed her and loved her. He sent a family photo and Nora copied it and framed it. She was so happy that he had at least written to her. She said he wished her the best. I let a few of my kids know that Jason was coming to the wedding. I also told Lynn and Max, but asked them to keep it a secret. 2 days before the wedding, I asked Nora if she would go to the airport with me. A friend was coming to the wedding and I wanted her to meet him. The nice thing about Nora was that she almost always went out of her way to meet me. I don't know if we ever argued. I know we disagreed, but we never raised our voices. We went to the terminal and I bought us each a drink to drink while we waited for the plane. Nora kept asking me questions about my friend. Honey, once you meet him, you'll love him as much as you love me, I said. I don't think that's even possible, Nora laughed. The plane landed, and as the passengers were getting off, she saw her 2 grandchildren. She recognized them from the picture Jason had sent her. Oh my God, those are my babies! Exclaimed Nora as her grandchildren ran up to her. She cried, but they were tears of joy. Then she saw her son Jason and his wife Gwen. Jason had tears in his eyes as he walked up to his mother. Nora and Jason were hugging. She hugged Gwen and then decided to introduce me. Jason, Gwen, I want you to meet the other man in my life that I truly love. Jason, it's nice to finally meet you. I can't tell you how great it is to have you here, I said. Nora hugged her son again. Nora, they'll be here for a week. That will be plenty of time to get reacquainted. Right now, they need to get their luggage and rental car. They can follow us to the condominium. Nora's grandchildren, Jennifer and Raymond, asked if they could ride back with us. Of course, Nora wanted them to be with us too. When we got back to the condo, I took them to my place so they could get settled in. I gave them the key and told them the condo was theirs for the week. I would spend the next 2 days with their Uncle Max, and then I would be with Nora. We stayed up most of the night, Nora and her family getting reacquainted. Lynn and her husband Dave also came over. For the next 2 days, Nora, her son, and his family socialized. Dave and Lynn stopped by Nora's apartment for a few minutes. As they talked, Lynn let it slip that I had given Jason money for the trip. She didn't know that I had never told Nora that I had paid for her son's trip. Nora cried when she found out that I had sent Jason the money for the trip. She leaned over to me and told me how much she loved me and then kissed me. At the wedding, I introduced everyone in my family to Jason and his family. They all got along great. The little church was full of family and friends. I took my seat up front and Dave was my best man. My 2 grandchildren walked down the aisle first. One as the ring bearer and the other as the flower girl. They were followed by Lynn as matron of honor. The music started and everyone stood up. The most beautiful woman in the world walked down the aisle. She was dressed in a light blue dress. She was holding the hand of her son, who was dressed in a military uniform. I could see tears on the faces of everyone present as Nora and her son walked down the aisle. Both of their eyes were full of tears as well. The pastor asked, "Who gives this woman to this man?" Jason stood up and said, "I give my mother to this man," and sat down. After I kissed the bride, we all headed to the reception. It was so nice to see how happy our families were and everyone was happy for us. Nora danced with each man. I, in turn, danced with more women. We brought in a DJ and told him that music should be for all ages. I told him to play That's Life by Frank Sinatra. When that song came on, everyone left the dance floor except Nora and me. My family knew it was my favorite song. Dancing with Nora, I asked her what her favorite song was. She had already told me that she had many favorite songs. You'll hear it pretty soon. The DJ will be playing it next. And then I heard Elvis's song I Can't Help Falling in Love with You start up. I pulled her close to me, and about a fourth of the way through the song, we were joined by everyone else who wanted to join us. Take my hand, take my whole life as well. After all, I can't help but fall in love with you. After the reception, I went home with Nora. We made love most of the night. We cuddled at first, and then we just took our time. I even took Viagra for the first time in my life to make sure I would last all night. The next day, we stopped by Jason's house. Nora said she wanted to talk to him. He had told her at the wedding that he wanted to tell her something, but it could wait until another day. Mom, I'm sorry I was so mad at you after Dad died. It's all because you married so young and to Dad's friend, Jason said. Darling, let me try to explain. After your father died, I was left alone. You were in Germany and I was here alone. Your father didn't leave me much money after paying his debts and last expenses. His friend Rob used to come over for a haircut. He would take me out to dinner and offer me companionship. A few months later, he asked me to marry him. You have to understand that at that time I was lonely and very vulnerable. Rob treated me well and I liked him, so I said yes. Jason, I never cheated on your father with Rob or anyone else. You have to believe me. I know now, Mom, but at the time all I remember is that my father was dead and you dated his friend and then married him. I'm sorry, dear, but there's nothing I can do to change that. Believe me, I haven't done anything wrong except marry so soon after your father died. What did you want to tell me? In 6 months, my service will be over. I can either re-enlist, in which case I can stay in Germany, or I can move to the States, but I can't move to the area. My other choice is to not re-enlist and move back to the States. Gwen and the kids said they wanted to move here. That's one of the reasons we wanted to come to the wedding. I was wondering if you would mind if we moved somewhere in the neighborhood. God, I wish you'd move back in. I could see you and my grandchildren all the time. Nora started crying again. I talked to John's son Justin at the reception, and he said he is a real estate agent and will do his best to find me a place to live that I can afford. I'm good with electronics, and I shouldn't have a problem finding a job. We don't have a lot of savings. I have to spend my entire paycheck to survive. If it wasn't for John, we wouldn't have been able to afford to come to the wedding. She looked at me and I just sat there and listened. Mom, we didn't want to take money from him, but he insisted. He said our presence at the wedding was more important than money. Didn't he tell you? Yes, but only after you arrive. That's the kind of man he is. He always puts me first. He knew I wanted nothing more than to have you at my wedding and your family as part of my life. Mom, I know it's none of my business, but how can you afford to live in those apartments? I heard they're very expensive. I want to tell you something. Even though you hated Rob, he was well insured. He was a partner in his firm, and when he died in a plane crash, the partners had to buy me out. I got a very large sum of money. I talked to John and told him I wanted to do something special for you and your family. Special? Like Mom? Jason asked. He suggested I put some money in an account for you. This morning, we went and opened a savings account for you. I put $500,000 into the account this morning. What? You're giving me $500,000 after the way I treated you. He started crying. Jason, you are my son and I love you, always have. I also opened 2 college fund accounts for the kids. I put $25,000 in each account. Hopefully with interest they will have money for college when they are ready. Here's your credit card to the account. It should be usable anywhere in the world. I hope you'll use it in the future to buy a house here near me. I watched them cuddle and knew everything was going to be okay. About that time, Gwen came in with the kids and said how much they enjoyed the pool. Jason looked at Gwen and asked if she wanted to move to Ohio to live with his mother. At this point, Nora and Gwen cried, and the kids were happy beyond belief. Epilogue. It's been a year since our wedding. Nora and I couldn't be happier. We had to add her grandchildren to our calendar of events. Jason and Gwen bought a house that Justin found for them. It was only 2 miles from where we live and very close to Julie and her family. Jason and Gwen are now part of our extended family. My children treat them like brother and sister. Jason opened his own electronics store and repairs computers. All my grandchildren now call Nora Grandma. She tells everyone that she has 20 grandchildren. Looking at her, they wonder how she does it. We still walk together almost every day. Sometimes you can see us on our bicycles. We still take bus trips and cuddle on the couch in the evenings. At least once a week or so, we make love. If we want a really big night, she gives me one of those little blue pills. As Frank would say, that's life. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.